You've always said you'd do anything for me, she said softly. If you truly love me, this is how you can prove it. We could live our lives free from the pressure of having children. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to get sterilized to prove my love for you? Do you even realize how insane that sounds? I'm Rick, and to me, marriage has always been about building something together: a home, a life, a future. Being with Rachel has given me all of that and more. We've been married for 3 years, and they've been nothing short of amazing. You know that feeling when everything just works? That's us. We've always been great at tackling the big topics together. From the start, having kids was part of the plan. I still remember the first time we talked about it, sitting on her small couch in her first apartment, sharing pizza and cheap wine. So, I said, leaning back, do you want kids someday? Someday, she teased, raising an eyebrow. Absolutely. I've always wanted a boy and a girl. You? Same, I replied, grinning, though I'd settle for just not messing them up too badly. She laughs that deep, full body laugh that makes you feel like you've hit the jackpot. Deal, she said, raising her glass. That conversation set the foundation for what we wanted in life. Over the years, it became part of everything we did: saving for a family friendly home, planning vacations that would someday include little ones, and even joking about baby names. Just the other day, Rachel was flipping through a home magazine at the kitchen counter. Rick, she called, holding up a page. Look at this. A swing set here, a garden over there. What do you think? I glanced at the picture and said, looks great, though I'd probably have to fight the kids for a turn on the swings. Swings are sacred territory, she said with mock seriousness. Adults banned. We both laughed, but honestly, it felt like a glimpse of our future. Rachel has always been amazing with kids. At family gatherings, she's the one, surrounded by nieces and nephews, making them laugh on the floor. Last Christmas, my niece Lily wouldn't leave her side. You're a natural, I told her on the drive home. Think so, she replied, brushing off the compliment, but I could tell she liked hearing it. Moments like that make me even more confident about starting a family. For years, we've been saving and cutting back on small luxuries to afford bigger ones, like a home with room to grow. We're financially stable, have strong careers, and share a healthy relationship. It feels like everything is finally falling into place. Last week, I started browsing strollers online. I know it's a little early, but it made everything feel more real. This isn't just a dream anymore. Over breakfast last Sunday, I slid a plate of eggs toward Rachel and said, I think we're ready. This year, she looked up from her coffee, surprised, with an expression I couldn't quite read. You think so? She asked. Don't you? I replied, suddenly unsure. Her smile was soft but hesitant. Yeah, it's exciting, she said, though her tone didn't match her words. I didn't push her. Rachel is thoughtful about big decisions and likes to take her time, but to me, this feels right. I imagine late night feedings, tiny shoes by the door, the beautiful chaos of parenthood that people joke about but secretly cherish. I see us painting a nursery, debating whether it should be green or yellow, with Rachel insisting on a reading nook because she believes every child should grow up loving books. You're going to be an amazing mom, I told her one night as we lay in bed. She turned to me, her face half hidden in the dim light. She pressed her lips to mine, and the moment flew by. You really think so? Of course, I said. You'll be incredible. She stared at the ceiling for a moment before murmuring, I hope so. That flicker of doubt appeared again, but I brushed it off. Everyone has nerves about such a big life change, right? This is huge, but I know Rachel, once she commits, she's all in. I can't wait for the next chapter of our story. Hi, I'm Rachel. If you'd asked me a few years ago where I saw myself today, I'd have said right here, married to Rick, living a great life and planning for a family. And for the most part, it's been wonderful. Rick is everything I could want in a partner: supportive, caring, and steady. But lately, something inside me has shifted. I've been restless in a way I can't explain. I'm ready to get married, restless in a way I can't explain. It's not Rick. He hasn't changed. It's me. I've started questioning things I once took for granted, especially the idea of having children. When we were dating, kids seemed like a given. I joked about the perfect boy girl combo, and Rick teased me about handling twins. Back then, it felt so natural. Of course, we'd have kids. Doesn't everyone? But now, I'm not so sure. It started a few months ago when a friend invited me to join a feminist book club. I've always been passionate about equality, so I thought it sounded fun. I didn't expect it to challenge how I see my life. One of the first books we read explored societal expectations for women. A chapter on motherhood described how it's often portrayed as the ultimate fulfillment, even for those who might not want it. That hit me hard. I started noticing things I'd overlooked. How people always told me I'd make a great mom someday, never asking if I wanted to. Or how having kids is treated as the natural next step after marriage, like a box to check off. Do you think you'd be happy without kids? I asked at a book club meeting. Absolutely, one woman said. My life feels full without them. Her answer stayed with me. What if I don't want to be a mom? It's not that I don't love kids. I adore my nieces and nephews. Seeing their little faces light up when I'm around brings me joy. But being good with kids and having your own are two entirely different things. Rick has been so excited about starting a family. When he talks about it, there's a light in his eyes that makes me want to jump in wholeheartedly. But then I think about everything I'd lose: freedom, time, the ability to focus on my own goals. I can't seem to shake the growing feeling that motherhood just might not be for me. I've tried dropping hints to Rick, but he hasn't picked up on them yet. The other morning, during breakfast, he looked up and said, This year, I think we're ready. For a moment, I froze, then forced a smile. You think so? I asked. His hopeful expression made my chest ache. You don't? He replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Yeah, it's exciting, I said, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. I couldn't bring myself to say anything else. Not yet. Rick's been dreaming about this for so long, and I didn't have the heart to crush that dream. But I can't ignore these feelings anymore. I've spent a lot of time journaling, trying to untangle my thoughts. Still, every time I think about telling Rick how I feel, a wave of guilt hits me. He's been nothing but supportive, and here I am, questioning something we've always agreed on. Last week at book club, I brought it up. How do you even start a conversation like that? I asked the group. It's tough, one woman said, but you owe it to yourself and him, to be honest. You can't fake your way through something as big as parenthood. She's right. I know she's right, but that doesn't make it easier. I keep imagining the moment, Rick sitting across from me, his warm smile fading as I tell him, I'm not sure I want kids. How do I even explain that the idea of being a mom feels more like a burden than a joy? part of me is terrified he'll think I've been stringing him along, or worse, that I've changed in a way he can't accept. But I also know I can't keep this inside. It's not fair to either of us. Rick deserves to know the truth, even if it's not what he wants to hear. So I've made up my mind. Tonight after dinner, I'll tell him. I'll sit him down and lay everything out, no matter how hard it is. I just hope he can understand. I love Rick with all my heart, but love doesn't mean pretending to be someone I'm not. It all started with what seemed like an ordinary evening. We'd just finished dinner, Rachel's lasagna, one of my favorites. She'd been unusually quiet throughout the meal, which isn't like her. Normally, she fills the silence with stories from her day. I assumed she was either tired or had something on her mind. Once we were done with the dishes, she turned to me. Can we sit for a minute? Ah, there's something I need to talk about. Of course, I said, settling onto the couch, but even as I smiled, I felt a strange heaviness in her tone. Shh. She took a deep breath. Rick, you know I love you, right? That's never the way you want a conversation to start. Trying to keep it light, I replied, of course, I love you too. What's going on? She fiddled with her hands, something she always does when she's nervous, before finally speaking. I've been thinking a lot about us, about starting a family. I smiled, relieved. Me too. I'm so excited. I really think we're ready. But her face didn't light up the way I expected. Instead, she looked down at her lap. Beck, I don't think I want kids anymore. I blinked, sure I'd misheard her. What? What do you mean? She lifted her eyes to mine, tears brimming but not yet falling. I mean, I don't think motherhood is right for me. I've been reflecting a lot and I just don't feel like I want that life anymore. For a moment, it felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I couldn't speak. We'd talked about this for years. Our entire relationship had been built around the idea that we'd start a family someday. Rachel, I finally managed. We've always talked about having kids. We've planned for it. We've saved for it. What changed? Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. I've changed. I've started questioning if I truly want to go down that road. The more I think about it, the more it feels like I'd be losing myself. Losing yourself? The words didn't make sense to me. I've always seen Rachel as strong and capable, someone who could handle anything life threw her way. How would you be losing yourself? It's hard to explain, she said, her voice trembling. But I've been reading, listening to other women's stories, and realizing I've never stopped to ask myself if this is what I really want or just what I thought I was supposed to want. I tried to stay calm, but my voice rose despite myself. Rachel, we built our whole future around this. All those nights talking about baby names, imagining what kind of parents we'd be. Was that not real to you? Uh, it was real, she insisted, tears spilling over. It was real then. But people change, Rick. I'm not the same person I was when we got married. Her words felt like a slap. So what now? I said, my voice sharp. You just decide on your own to throw all of that away? She flinched at my tone but stood her ground. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm being honest with you. Isn't that what you'd want from me? Honest? I snapped. Honest would have been telling me this before we started talking about trying for a baby. Her voice broke. I didn't know then, Rick. I didn't know how I felt, but I do now. And I need you to understand. Understand? I said, my frustration boiling over. How am I supposed to understand this? And then, as if the situation couldn't get worse, she added, I think you should get a vasectomy. I froze, staring at her like she'd lost her mind. Excuse me? Um, you've always said you'd do anything for me, she said quietly. If you really love me, this is how you can prove it. We could live free of the pressure to have kids. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to sterilize myself to prove I love you? Do you even hear how ridiculous that sounds? It's not ridiculous, she said, her voice rising. It's about breaking free from outdated expectations. We don't have to live by what society tells us we should do. This isn't about society, I snapped. This is about us. Or at least I thought it was. But now it feels like you've made this decision all on your own. I had to, she said, tears finally falling, because you wouldn't have listened if I'd brought it up sooner. You're so fixated on this perfect picture of the future that you can't see anything else. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. Do you even realize what you're asking me to give up? This isn't just some abstract idea for me, Rachel. I've dreamed of being a dad my entire life. And I've dreamed of being free to live my life on my terms, she shot back. What about my dreams, Rick? Her words hung in the air like smoke, suffocating the room. I shook my head, unable to meet her eyes. I need some air. Rick, wait! She called after me, but I was already halfway out the door. I didn't slam it behind me, but it felt like I had. As I walked away, my chest felt like it had been torn apart. The woman I had built my life around, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, suddenly felt like a stranger. I had no idea if we could ever find our way back to each other. The dynamic between us had shifted, the tension now unbearable, present in every word we spoke and every glance we exchanged. Rick's face turned cold, his icy expression leaving no doubt that this wasn't just a disagreement. This was the end. I had thought about this moment for weeks, maybe even months. How to leave without the crushing guilt. How to tell him I wasn't the person he thought I was. That the dream we'd built together wasn't my dream anymore. Now, standing here in front of him, I realized there was no way to soften the blow. I barely had time to speak before he broke the silence. It's your decision, Rick said flatly, his voice void of emotion. But don't expect me to play along. I'm not going to sit here while you tear everything down and then act like I'm the bad guy for not going along with it. I felt the frustration rise in my chest, that surge of anger I'd come to recognize all too well. But now it felt pointless. I wanted him to understand. I needed him to understand. But deep down, I knew he already did. And he was done. His words were deliberate, each one striking with precision, driving a wedge deeper between us. Rick, I started, my voice barely audible. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to say anymore. You don't get it, Rick snapped, his eyes locked on mine with an unwavering intensity. There wasn't even a flicker of hesitation. You've made your choice, Rachel. Now I'm making mine. Don't stand there and ask me to live your dream when you don't respect mine. My heart sank at the way he said it, as if it were that simple, as if everything had led to this one moment. He was right. I had pushed him away. I had been so focused on my own growth and my own needs that I hadn't considered his feelings, his dreams. I had chosen my path, and now I had to walk it alone. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could I say? How could I defend myself now? I had asked him to bend, to change for me. And now he was standing here, telling me no. He wasn't willing to sacrifice his life for a dream that wasn't his. Then he said the words that shattered me completely. Pack your things. I'm done. You wanted freedom. You've got it. Now get out. I flinched. I had known this was coming, but hearing it said aloud with such finality, broke whatever resolve I had left. I stood frozen, unable to process the weight of his words. Rick's gaze didn't waver. His eyes were like stone. "You can go now," he said firmly. The pain in my chest was overwhelming. I wanted to argue, to plead, to say something, anything that might undo what had just happened. But I didn't. I couldn't. What was left to say? The apologies, the explanations, they were useless now. He was right. I had changed, and now we were both paying the price for it. I grabbed my bag, its weight feeling like the physical embodiment of everything we had been together. I wanted to scream, to fight, to stop all of this from happening, but there was no turning back. Rick didn't say a word as I walked past him. He didn't beg me to stay, didn't plead or even glance my way. He just stood there, staring straight ahead, a man who had made peace with the end of us. The door closed behind me with a resounding slam, and that was it. We were over. 5 years later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My hair, now chopped short and dyed a deep red, was the opposite of what it used to be. The woman looking back at me didn't feel familiar. She looked like someone I had crafted, a person shaped by my own choices. But even this version of myself couldn't escape the truth. I was alone. I hadn't dated seriously in years. A few casual flings here and there, but nothing meaningful. Just the other night, a guy at a bar had looked me up and down and said, "I don't date feminist hoe heads." I'd laughed it off, but it stung more than I wanted to admit. I wasn't the carefree woman I used to be. I wasn't the person who believed she could conquer the world with her ideals. Now, I was someone who had to face the reality that those ideals had come at a steep cost. The loss of everything I once had. Meanwhile, Rick had moved on. I had seen the photos. His wife, Clara, smiling next to him, 2 kids in tow. Their lives seemed perfect, flourishing in the way ours had once been meant to. They had the life I'd dreamed of. And here I was, still trying to figure out who I even was. Maybe this was the price of freedom, but now I wasn't sure if it had been worth it.